Guys, welcome to the channel. It's We're Behind the Camera, and I appreciate that you're here with me tonight. Look, we're going to talk about two buses tonight. One more powerful and one more practical, because this one that we are in right now is the Mercedes-Vito 119 Tourer, and yeah, it has all these funky lights. Wait. We'll talk about all this stuff later on. Look, in here, I've spoken about this just last week, but I thought we need to talk about this in relation to the other bus that we've driven, which is the Ford Tourneo. And the two have some differences here and there, but I feel they are competing, in fact, toe to toe. That's what I feel about them, because, you know, sometimes people tend to relate anything that is a bus to the V-Class, but when you look at the V-Class price, you start thinking that, you know what, maybe we are not necessarily comparing apples with apples here, because that V-Class is like 2.3 million, and this one, it starts just below, what, 1 million? And you'll be getting 114, and to get all the way up to 116, you will be crossing over 2 millions there. And 119, which is this one that we're in tonight, then it's around 1.3 million, 1360. I've seen somewhere it says 1375, and that's probably some differences that it has with the Ford, because the Ford comes a little bit below. Yep, at around 1.1 million. So we are talking around 260,000 rands difference. And that is the top spec trend variant of the Ford that I'm talking about. And this one is the top spec of the Vitos, especially the Tourer Select, because then it's the 119 coming in with a 2-liter turbocharged diesel engine 140 kilowatts, 440 newton meters of torque. With the Ford, you will find that it's pushing out 100 kilowatts and 360 newton meters of torque. But that is not the only difference, because when you're looking at the prices and you're probably considering them maybe for family and business, depending on how you're seeing them, because looks matter. and that's something that I don't want to discredit just right away. Looks actually do matter, and it will depend, especially for someone who's looking for business or anything like that. They might be looking at them similarly and say, okay, fine, which one is going to be giving me the best value? Because I mean, 260,000 is quite a lot of money in terms of differences. But one thing probably that is a competitive advantage is definitely when you get on the road when it comes to this bus. This Mercedes bus, guys, actually the performance is something that I applaud when I'm driving it, because yeah, it actually moves, especially when you don't have like a full house in the vehicle. I mean, mostly you will be having people if you're doing business with this kind of a bus, but that tells you a story about the Ford, and that's something that I've experienced when it comes to this one and the Ford. So I just want to talk a little bit about this one on the road, and then we'll jump over to the Ford. Luckily, we drove them on the same road. I'm jumping onto the N14 right now. So when I switch over to the Ford as well, I will be talking from the same road as well. Different days, but yeah, it will definitely give us a little bit of a feeling in terms of how these two vehicles are actually coming toe to toe together, right? Because in this one, what I like more about it, especially with the night spec, because this is a night review of some sort, so we need to talk about night spec. Number one, you've seen already that I do have blind spot monitoring, which is of course assisting a lot in terms of when you have to move something as big as this. And these lights, you get the multi-beam LEDs, man. They are doing a great job at night. They're exactly the same lights that I've experienced in the V200D. You get them in here as well. You would have seen that when I turned on the car, they were coming on. So that's something that you will experience, of course, that you know what, you don't struggle when it comes to lights at night. And I like that despite them doing this whole thing of matrix whatever's, you don't get a lot of complaints from the road that you're dazzling us or anything like that. They are actually performing very well, especially for a vehicle that I didn't initially see as a family bus. So that's something that is pretty much impressive. And yeah, in here you get the airbag system that of course you get as well in the other vehicles from Mercedes, and it's doing almost everything that the other cars can do in terms of, you get the navigation, you do get your Android autos and all those. I hardly talk about that stuff. It's almost standard in every car these days, unless if it's not there, then I can talk about it. But one thing that you would have seen initially when I was showing you around the cars and so on, you would have seen that the lights in here, they are a little bit yellowish compared to the Ford. And that's where I think maybe Ford has done well in terms of the interior lighting and everything else. As much as I can't really say when it comes to illumination, they're quite bad compared to the Ford as well. So from that perspective, I think both of them actually, they've done quite well in terms of managing that, especially when you have a bus like this, because you actually need enough lights that are going to be illuminating in here. But I think the Ford is edging it a little bit when it comes to lighting on the interior, because yeah, you can get far with your eyes when it comes to the Ford. Even if you drop something at night while you're just traveling and so on, with reading lights and so on, you can be able to pick it up. That's something that I appreciated with the Ford. And another thing is the space. Now when it comes to these two buses, one thing that you need to look at and consider is definitely the space. This one measuring 5.1 and Ford just below 5.5. It's a long wheelbase, that Ford. I mean, it's long, that thing. Luckily, you can maneuver it almost as like the same as this one, which is nice, which is actually quite decent, because then now when it's long like that, sometimes you might have a problem just maneuvering it. But I never had issues, and I applaud the practicality of that compared to this one. And I still try to get to a point of saying, you know what, should I justify this 260,000 extra, especially if you go top spec to top spec? I think if you get the 116, which probably has cloth seats compared to the Ford as well, you might start saying that is exactly toe to toe, and I think the prices are almost equally matched as well. So maybe I'm crossing over to the bananas with this one, but I don't think so, because I really think the Ford Tourneo does compete with the Vito. Maybe Ford needs to think about it and think, you know what, maybe let me throw in the leather seats in there, and maybe it will make people feel like, you know what, even for family, I can consider it. And consider the short wheelbase again, because that long wheelbase in the belly looks a little bit too long. Yeah, but I think, you know what, this is how this one drives over here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to throw in silent night reviews for both of them, and you will just experience how they feel on the road, and probably you will be hearing, not necessarily how you're feeling it, because I felt them for you, so I'll tell you. But just on the road like this, you don't get much difference. You don't really get much difference. One thing that this one has a competitive advantage on, it's definitely the performance. Like I said, even if we can say, no, the engines are the same size, 4-cylinder diesels, nah, this one actually on the road performs quite well. But where it is not actually beating the Ford, it's on the other side of things that you're looking for when you're getting a bus, because you'll be traveling with people, and that is the comfort levels. I want to move over then to the Ford, show you how it drives. Then afterwards, I will tell you what I think about this additional 260,000 rands over the Trend variant. Then we can conclude that, and I will be quiet. You'll experience both vehicles. I will throw in a few minutes clips for each, and then you will see how they drive. Let's move over to the Ford. In the Ford, and this is the Ford Tourneo. Of course, I've already indicated that it has a 2-liter turbocharged engine, 100 kilowatts, and 360 Newton meters of torque. Immediately when you jump to the Ford, one thing that you can pick up as a competitive advantage is definitely the insulation, the quietness, and the comfort levels. And funny enough, when you're driving on roads where you're like in town and so on, you don't necessarily get that much difference, because you don't require a lot of power to actually move this thing. And that's something that you start asking yourself, that, you know, how did they do it, especially when it comes to drivability. I like that. But these things are not made to be driven in town. These are going to be hitting the long distance trips, and that's where then that Mercedes is taking on that performance. In here, of course, you do get the LED lights as well that are just illuminating quite well. Unfortunately, it's not matrix LEDs that are going to be doing some nice stuff on the road, showing you here and that. And yeah, disadvantage when it comes to that. And I can't complain much about it, but look, it's alright. You don't need to get that, especially because you're paying less, right? You're paying less. So you do get the high beam assist, which is operating well as well. You can see even the way that it's operating right now. I can't complain again about it. But one thing is that picking it up, it's almost similar, and especially because the torque is catching quite low for both of them. And from that perspective, you don't necessarily find that they're much different when it comes to the drive itself, and when you're not doing a lot of speed and so on. But you'll start feeling it when you're putting stuff in both of them. And now, because these are buses, you're going to be traveling with people, that's where then the separation starts coming in. The Ford's competitive advantage is definitely the comfort levels, the insulation. This thing feels way more solid to me. Yes, I did say that the Vito felt more solid than the V200D, funny enough, because the amount of rattles and squeaky stuff that are in there are so minimal. But that's why I think the Ford is edging it a bit, because when I think about the suspension levels and everything else, it is so surprising that Ford has done it quite well. It's more smooth. It feels a little bit more plush when you're driving it on the road compared to both the V200D and the Vito. I know, I said that, and that's my feeling. We can fight in the comments about this, but I'm telling you. And some of the wind noises that I complained about from the V-Class as well, I did say that in the Ford here, I did not get them. Unfortunately, that's what you're getting in this, regardless of what you feel about the streets. That's how I felt about both of them. And I have to say, when I look at the Vito compared to this one, the screen design and everything else, the placement, I think they've done a great job when it comes to that. So the interior, I think the Ford's interior, overall, I like the design. Just that there's a lot of plastic used, and when I look at it overall, I think, there's too much plastic. They could cover some stuff with leather, and it's going to be much better. But I don't think I can say the same about the Vito one, which is okay compared to the old Vito, of course. But even if you probably put leathers here and there, but that center part of the screen, it's still too plasticky, it's still too utilitarian, man. It doesn't give those great luxury vibes. As much as I think for premium travel and everything else, it's quite good. And of course, in here, the screen is quite bigger. And when I'm looking overall with the illumination and everything else, I can't even say the other one is better than the other. Ford is using ice blue and Mercedes is using like white, which I love white more. From that perspective, they've done a great job. And when you look at it overall, I think the illumination, like I said, you do get better illumination in here. Unfortunately, you don't get blind spot monitoring at night, but you do get this small mirror under the main mirror, which is giving you like a wide view, and it's helping a lot when it comes to the vision overall. But the two, when it comes to vision, I can't really say that there's much difference from what I've seen, basically. So, where is the 260,000 rands additional coming from? I'm saying 260 because I'm making a relation, guys. It's just a roundup. You will do the math yourself there. I think where the 260 is coming from is definitely the additional spec that you get in the Vito, because yeah, like I said, matrix LEDs, they call them multi-beam LEDs, I think, at Mercedes. You do get blind spot monitoring, you do actually get leather seats in there, and all this stuff that you're doing automatically, like opening the doors, the rear tailgate, you also get those in the Vito, which you don't get in here. A lot of stuff in here are manual, from the seats and everything else, as much as the front seats are also heated like in the Mercedes. But just overall, when you look at everything else that the Mercedes offers, it's actually calling for premium luxury to luxury travel, as much as it's not the luxurious travel, but it's premium to luxury, which I think the 260,000 is actually justified. Also, from the design perspective, I have to say, from my side, when I look at them design-wise and everything else, even interior design, especially the rear, that's where I feel that the Mercedes is taking everything else that is remaining. Because yeah, Ford, this looks a little bit more about moving people, utility, than I can ever choose it for family. And I think the Mercedes is covering that, and especially because it's not a long wheelbase, it's measuring just 5.1. And when I look at it overall, I'm thinking, can I do this with my family? I'll definitely take the Vito any day because of the looks from outside to inside. That's where I think the 260 comes in. It's also convincing with the design elements that they've done, especially on the exterior. So that's where I think the two strengths are coming from. But hey, I think if there's anything left is the sound system. This one, the Ford has 10-speaker Ford sound system that I think it's not the best by Ford standard. But if I was to look at the Vito, that sound system is not it. I think it has 6 speakers, 2-way speakers, and yeah, it's just not it. But overall, the two of them, I think they are serving almost the same market, just that the Mercedes can also go further and serve family easily compared to the Ford Tourneo, in my view. So I am out. You'll tell me in the comments what you think about the two of them.